The crystal chandeliers at the Grand Plaza Hotel bled light, a sharp, artificial brilliance that painted the ballroom in shades of glaring gold. I stood just inside the arched doorway, an uninvited specter at a feast of wolves. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of expensive perfume and the sweeter, sickening scent of lilies piled high on a central table. Music drifted from a string quartet, a mournful, classical piece that felt completely out of place against the backdrop of loud, self-important conversations. This was Manhattan's elite, a swirling mass of tailored tuxedos and gowns that shimmered like fish scales. The women were tall and sharp, their laughter like breaking glass, their bodies adorned with diamonds that flashed like weapons. The men were broad, their faces flushed with whiskey and entitlement, their voices a low, confident rumble. I felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a lion's den. My dress was black velvet, simple, elegant. It was the most expensive thing I had ever owned, the result of 3 months of scrimping and saving, but in this room, it felt like a uniform of the poor. I was not one of them. I did not belong. My palms were damp, but I forced my hands to remain steady at my sides. I had no invitation. My name. Lena Calloway was not on the gilded list held by the stone-faced man at the door, but I had a reason to be here, a purpose that burned like a cold fire in my gut, extinguishing all fear, leaving only a hollow, driving resolve. My eyes scanned the crowd, moving past the clusters of laughing politicians and their brittle wives, past the men who were clearly industry titans, and past the younger, sharper men who stood at the edges, watching. My gaze hunted, searching for one face in this sea of masks. And then I found him. He was standing near the marble fireplace, holding a glass of amber liquid, Victor Carleone. The man's name tasted like ash in my mouth. He was older than the last pictures I had seen, his hair a distinguished silver, his body softened with wealth, but his eyes, even from across the room, were the same. They were small, dark, and utterly devoid of life. He laughed, a booming, wet sound, and slapped the back of a younger man beside him. The sight of him sent a jolt through me, hot and vicious. This was the man, the one whose orders, whose carelessness, whose simple, brutal existence had led to the death of my sister, Emily. She'd been 19. She'd been vibrant and stupid and so full of life it had overflowed. And this man, this butcher in a $1,000 suit, had snuffed her out like a candle. My vision narrowed, the opulent room, the glittering guests, the pretentious music. It all faded into a dull, gray roar. There was only him. Every instinct screamed at me to walk across that polished marble floor, to claw his smiling face, to make him feel 1/10 of the pain that had been my constant companion for 2 years. But that was not the plan. Rage was a luxury. The plan was cold. The plan was smart. My target was not Victor Carleone. Not tonight. My target was the nervous, rail-thin man standing just to Carleone's left, the one pretending to listen intently. Arthur Finley, Carleone's accountant, a man with a known gambling problem and shaky hands. Finley was my way in. He was the first crack in Carleone's fortress. I just needed a moment, an introduction, a chance to plant the first seed of doubt. I took a deep, steadying breath, letting the cold fire settle back into my stomach. I began to move. I slipped into the crowd, a shadow moving between the bright, loud bodies. I kept my head high, my expression placid, as if I belonged. I plucked a flute of champagne from a passing waiter's silver tray. I did not drink it. It was a prop, a shield. I needed to look the part of a guest, bored and circulating. I drifted, my path a slow, calculated spiral toward the fireplace. I passed a woman complaining about the service in Monaco. I skirted a heated, whispered argument between a senator and his aide. I was close now, maybe 20 feet away. Carleone was gesturing wildly with his glass, telling a story. Finley was nodding, his smile a strained grimace. I could see the sweat on his upper lip. I was 10 feet away. I prepared myself. bracing for the accidental stumble, the spill, the profuse apologies that would buy me 30 seconds with Arthur Finley. I raised my foot to take the next step, my focus absolute. A sudden chill ran down my spine, the air behind me displaced. It was not a sound, but a feeling, a presence. The ambient noise of the party seemed to dip, as if a vacuum had just opened beside me. Before I could turn, before I could even process the warning, something heavy and warm enveloped my shoulders. I froze, my foot hovering above the floor. A man's overcoat, impossibly soft and smelling of sandalwood, aged leather, and something metallic and cold, was draped around me. It was huge, swallowing my frame, the collar brushing my chin. A hand, large and firm, settled on my shoulder. Its weight was not just physical, it was a statement. It was a claim. My blood turned to ice. This was not possible. This was not part of the plan. I turned my head slowly, the velvet of my dress rustling against the coat's silk lining. The man beside me was impossibly tall, his shoulders broad enough to block my view of the entire room. He was a wall of muscle and menace, poured into a black tuxedo that was tailored to perfection. His face was a striking collection of harsh angles and cold beauty. A straight, aristocratic nose, a jaw that looked carved from granite, and eyes, the color of the deepest ocean. So dark they were almost black. They were not looking at me. They were scanning the room, a look of bored, absolute ownership on his face. My breath hitched. I knew who he was. Everyone in this world knew who he was. Giovanni Russo? If Victor Corleone was the old guard, a bloated relic of a bygone era, Giovanni Russo was the new breed. He was lethal, disciplined, and utterly ruthless. His organization was strangling Corleone's, slowly and methodically. He was a phantom, a man who rarely appeared in public, a man who controlled his empire from the shadows. And he had just put his coat on me. Across the room, I saw Arthur Finley's head snap in our direction. His eyes met mine. He saw me, an unknown woman. But then his gaze lifted, taking in the coat that enveloped me, and the man who stood beside me. Finley's face, already pale, turned a ghostly white. The man's eyes widened in what looked like pure terror. He took a clumsy step back, bumping into another guest, and then practically scuttled behind Victor Corleone, vanishing from my sight. My opportunity, my one chance, planned for weeks, was gone, evaporated. A white-hot surge of fury flooded my veins, so potent it momentarily eclipsed my fear. Who did this man think he was? He had destroyed months of work with one simple, arrogant gesture. I wanted to shrug off his coat, to scream at him, but I was paralyzed. As if he could feel the rage radiating from me, Giovanni Russo finally, slowly, lowered his gaze to meet mine. It was like being submerged in ice water. His stare was intense, unblinking and utterly unreadable. There was no warmth, no kindness, not even simple curiosity. It was an assessment. He was looking at me the way a scientist looks at a specimen, or the way a wolf looks at its prey. He cataloged my face, my eyes, the way my hair was pinned up, the pulse I could feel hammering in my throat. His hand, still resting on my shoulder, tightened. It was not a squeeze. It was a command. Do not move. He leaned in. He did not bend his head. He simply inclined it. Bringing his face close to mine, I could feel the heat rolling off his skin, a stark contrast to the coldness in his eyes. His lips were inches from my ear. I held my breath, my entire body rigid. I was trapped by his proximity, by his reputation, by the sheer, suffocating weight of his power. His voice was a low rumble, a vibration that seemed to travel straight down my spine. "You look cold, Lena." The world stopped. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all dissolved into a distant, buzzing static. He knew my name. His voice, that quiet, private rumble, vibrated through my bones. He knew my name. It was not a question. It was a statement. How did a man like Giovanni Russo know my name? My life was not supposed to intersect with men like him. I was Lena Calloway. My father owned a hardware store in Queens, a small, dusty place that smelled of sawdust and metal. My mother was a piano teacher, her hands always moving, her patience endless. We were a family of beige carpets and Sunday dinners, of quiet arguments about who left the milk out. I was raised on scraped knees, borrowed library books, and the steady, unremarkable rhythm of a normal life. I had been an administrative assistant in a gray cubicle in Midtown. My biggest concerns had been spreadsheets, jammed printers, and and Harrison's inability to remember his own meeting schedule. I wanted a quiet apartment, maybe a cat. I craved the ordinary. I wanted peace. Then there was Emily, my sister. She was 3 years younger than me, but she seemed to have absorbed all the fire and light that had skipped my own creation. Where I was cautious, she was reckless. Where I was quiet, she was a symphony. She was 19 years old. She was vibrant and foolish and so beautiful it almost hurt to look at her. She wanted the city, the lights, the danger. She thought it was all a movie, a glittering adventure designed just for her. I told her she was wrong. I warned her about the men she was meeting, the clubs she disappeared into, the casual way she spoke of names that made my blood run cold. She just laughed. She called me an old woman. She told me to live a little. The call came on a Tuesday, a cold, gray November morning. 2 detectives, their faces tired, their cheap suits rumpled. They stood in the entryway of our parents' home, their hats clutched in their hands. She had been found in an alley. There had been a party at a private club. They said, a misunderstanding. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Collateral damage. The party was hosted by associates of Victor Carleone. The name hung in the air, thick and toxic. The investigation was a farce. It was closed in less than 48 hours. Gang-related, the lead detective told my father, his eyes refusing to meet ours. He shrugged, a gesture of bureaucratic helplessness. He told us we should be grateful they were not looking into Emily's own connections. He implied she had brought this on herself. Peace. The word became a mockery. The quiet life I craved felt like a betrayal. How could I want peace when the man responsible for her death was still breathing? How could I sit in a cubicle while Victor Carleone was sitting in a restaurant, laughing, eating steak, existing in a world that Emily had been violently torn from? My grief was not a flood of tears. It was a chemical reaction. It burned away the soft, normal parts of me, leaving something hard and cold and focused. It hollowed me out and filled the empty space with a single, driving purpose: justice. The police were useless. The courts were blind. The normal world, my world, had failed. To get justice for Emily, I had to leave that world behind. I had to enter theirs, the world I had always avoided, the world that had swallowed my sister whole. I quit my job. I sold my car. I moved into a one-room apartment in Hell's Kitchen, a place with thin walls and the constant smell of old grease. I became invisible. I took jobs that put me on the periphery of their world. I was a waitress in a diner where low-level wise guys ate breakfast, their conversations loud and boastful. I was a cleaner in an office building that housed one of Carleone's legitimate front businesses. I learned to listen. I learned to watch. I memorized faces, license plates, delivery schedules. I bought a police scanner. I spent my nights piecing together their empire, drawing a map of their organization. Victor Carleone was the target. He was the head, but he was untouchable, insulated by layers of men and money. I could not get to him, not directly. I needed a crack in the fortress. That led me to Arthur Finley, Carleone's accountant, a man with trembling hands, a known gambling addiction, and mounting debts. He was the weak link. He was my way in. Which led me, 6 months ago, to another party. It was not a glittering ball like this one. It was a private fundraiser at a museum, a respectable event hosted by the Russo family. Carleone was not there, but I had a strong tip that Finley would be. Carleone's organization was crumbling, and rumors were flying that some of his key men were looking for an exit strategy. They were looking to pledge loyalty to the new power, to Giovanni Russo. I did not have a velvet dress that night. I had a gray catering uniform I had stolen from a dry cleaner's van 2 days prior. My plan was simple, almost laughably amateur. Get in through the service entrance, find the staff coat check, locate Finley's coat, and plant a small listening device in the lining. The museum was dark, the main hall filled with the low murmur of the party. The guests were mingling among priceless artifacts. I moved through the empty, echoing corridors of the second floor, my rubber-soled shoes silent on the polished stone. I was carrying an empty silver tray, my prop. I was heading for the staff rooms, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I turned a corner, and I walked straight into a wall of muscle. I stumbled back, the tray clattering to the floor with a sound that seemed to cannon through the silence. He did not move an inch. He just stood there, framed in the dim blue light of an exhibit on ancient Greece, Giovanni Russo. I knew him instantly. His photograph was notoriously difficult to find, but I had studied it until my eyes burned. He was younger than I had imagined. He was in a black tuxedo, but his bow tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck. He looked less like a guest and more like a panther that had been set loose in the building. His presence was absolute. My blood turned to ice. This was not Carleone, a bloated relic. This was Russo. He was disciplined, lethal, and infinitely more dangerous. This man did not leave loose ends. He did not allow mistakes, and I was a very big, very clumsy mistake. "I am lost," I stammered, the lie pathetic. My voice sounded thin, alien. I was looking for the kitchen. He did not speak. He just watched me. His eyes, those same dark, bottomless eyes that were on me now, held me captive. They moved slowly, assessing me. They took in my terrified face, the ill-fitting uniform, the way my hands were shaking. Then his gaze dropped to the empty tray on the floor. He knew, in that single terrible instant, I knew that he knew. He knew I was not staff. He knew I was not lost. I braced myself, for the hand on my arm, for the call to security, for the quiet, terrifying men who would appear from the shadows and drag me into a back room. Instead, he did something I could not possibly have predicted. He smiled. It was not a warm expression. It was sharp, calculating, and almost amused. It was the smile of a predator that has just found a new, interesting toy. He bent down, not to grab me, but to retrieve the tray. He moved with a fluid, dangerous grace. He straightened up and handed it back to me. His fingers brushed mine. They were cold. "The kitchen, Maine," he said, his voice that same deep, quiet rumble, "is the other way." He nodded with his chin, back down the hallway from which I had just come. I stared at him, my mind unable to function. He was letting me go. "Go," he said. The amusement was gone. His voice was flat. It was a command. I did not have to be told twice. I turned, my legs feeling like wood, and walked away. I did not run. I forced myself into a fast, steady walk, my back rigid, expecting a bullet or a hand on my shoulder at any second. Nothing came. I did not look back. I dumped the uniform in the first bathroom I found and walked straight out the front door, disappearing into the city night. I had been seen. I had failed. I had come face to face with the most powerful man in the city, and he had let me go. I assumed he had dismissed me, a foolish, harmless girl. I had assumed he would forget me. But as I stood there in the Grand Plaza, 6 months later, trapped in the impossible warmth of his coat, I knew how wrong I had been. He had not forgotten me, and he had been watching. He knew my name. And that single fact, more than the sight of Victor Carleone, more than the room full of enemies, terrified me. It meant my small, secret war for Emily was not a secret at all. And the man whose coat I was wearing was not just a spectator. He was a player, and he had just changed every rule in the game. My heart was a trapped bird, beating against my ribs so hard I was sure he could feel it. The hand on my shoulder was heavy, possessive. His words, "You look cold, Lena," echoed in the sudden, silent space he had created around us. My fury, so sharp just a moment ago, was replaced by a cold, paralyzing dread. This was not a rescue. It was a capture. He had known I was here. He had known who I was for 6 months. He had watched me, tracked me, and allowed my pathetic, clumsy attempts at espionage to continue. "I do not," I managed to say. The words tight in my throat. I tried to shrug off the coat, but his grip tightened, holding it and me in place. "You are drawing attention," he murmured. His voice so low it was impossible for anyone else to hear. His gaze lifted from mine and scanned the room, a look of profound, arrogant boredom on his face. "Victor is looking at you. His little accountant has run off. You have made a mess." "I did not do anything," I whispered, the lie tasting like acid. "Exactly." His eyes snapped back to mine, and the coldness in them was absolute. "You are done here. Walk." It was not a request. His hand left my shoulder and settled in the small of my back, a solid, immovable pressure. He began to propel me forward, not toward the exit, but deeper into the party. The crowd parted for him. It was like magic. Men who looked like they owned countries stepped aside, their expressions shifting from arrogance to deference. Women who had looked through me moments before now stared, their eyes wide with curiosity, assessing me, assessing the coat, his coat. I was his. That was the message. He was parading me. I felt like a prize he had just won, a thing he was showing off before he took it home. My cheeks burned with humiliation. We walked the entire length of the ballroom, a slow, deliberate procession. He did not speak. He just guided me, his hand a brand on my back. He led me through a different archway, into a quiet, mahogany-paneled corridor. The music and the chatter faded, replaced by the sound of our footsteps on the thick carpet. At the end of the hall, a private elevator stood waiting, its gold doors open. A man in a dark suit stood beside it, his head bowed. Giovanni stopped. He did not get in. He turned me to face him. The coat was still on me. "Go home, Lena," he said. His hand was gone. I felt suddenly bare without it. "My coat," I said, my voice shaking. "I have a... Nah." "Go home?" His gaze was flat. "My driver will take you. Do not leave your apartment. We will speak tomorrow. Before I could argue, before I could ask him how he knew my name, how he knew where I lived, he had turned. He walked back toward the ballroom, leaving me in the hallway, swallowed by the scent of sandalwood and the suffocating weight of his coat. The man at the elevator gestured inside. I had no choice. The ride down was silent. The ride home was silent. The black town car moved through the city streets like a phantom. I lived in a small, one-room apartment on the 3rd floor of a walk-up. The driver, a mountain of a man who never looked at me, pulled up directly in front of the peeling entrance. He got out and opened my door. I slid out, the massive coat still around me. I tried to hand it to him. "Ooh, Mister, Russo said you should keep it," the driver said, his voice a gravelly monotone. He got back in the car and was gone, disappearing into the late-night traffic. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my legs unsteady. I let myself into my apartment and bolted the door. The room was cold. I stood in the dark, the coat still on me. It was a violation. It was a mark. He had claimed me, publicly, and then sent me away like a child. My plan, my careful, desperate plan to get to Arthur Finley was in ashes, and Giovanni Russo was the one who had set it on fire. I spent the night awake, sitting in my single chair, watching the city lights. I did not move. I did not sleep. I just waited. The coat lay puddled on my floor, a dark, accusing shape. The summons came at 11 in the morning. Not a call, not a text, a knocky. It was not on my apartment door. It was on the main building door, 3 floors down, a sharp, insistent rapping that cut through the building's usual morning sounds. I looked out my window. A black sedan, different from last night, was parked at the curb. A man in a tailored suit stood on my front stoop. He was looking up, directly at my window. He knew which one was mine. My blood ran cold. I had been invisible for 2 years. Now, I felt like I was pinned under a spotlight. I went down. I opened the heavy door just a crack. The man was tall, his face impassive. "Miss Calloway, Mr. Russo will see you now." He handed me a slip of paper, an address, a penthouse in Midtown. "I'm busy," I said, my voice weak. The man did not blink. "No, you're not. The car is waiting." He stepped aside. It was an order. I walked back up the stairs, my heart pounding. I was trapped. I could run. I could pack my small bag and vanish. But where would I go? He knew my name. He knew my home. A man like Giovanni Russo would find me before I bought the bus ticket. I washed my face. I put on the same black velvet dress from last night. It felt appropriate. It felt like armor. I did not wear the coat. The penthouse office was designed to intimidate. It was a massive expanse of glass, black marble and chrome, occupying the entire top floor. The view was staggering, overlooking Central Park from so high up that the people were invisible. The cars just a slow, silent river of lights. He was not behind a desk. He was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to me, dressed in a simple black shirt and trousers. He looked like a panther surveying his territory. "You left my coat," he said, his voice calm. He did not turn around. "It did not belong to me," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "It did from the moment I put it on you." He turned, and the full force of his presence hit me. In the daylight, he was even more striking. His eyes were clear, cold, and missed nothing. "You did not drink your champagne. You did not speak to anyone. You were hunting. Your target was Arthur Finley." My breath caught. "You were going to spill your drink on him," he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "You were going to apologize. You were going to use the opportunity to mention his gambling debts. You were going to offer him a solution, a way out, in exchange for information on Victor Corleone." I said nothing. I could not. He had not just watched me. He had read my mind. It was a stupid plan. Lena." He walked toward me, his movements fluid and precise. "Finley is a coward. He would have gone straight to Corleone. You would have been dead before midnight." "What do you want?" I asked, my hands clenched at my sides. He stopped a few feet from me. "I want to know why. Why you were at my museum 6 months ago. Why you have spent the last 2 years of your life digging into Victor Corleone's garbage. You were an administrative assistant. You had a normal life. You were nobody." "That is none of your business," I spat, the anger finally returning, sharp and clean. "Your sister," he said. The words hit me like a physical blow. I recoiled, Emily Calloway, 19, found in an alley in the meatpacking district 2 years ago. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. She was at a party hosted by associates of Victor Corleone. The case was closed in 48 hours. The official report said it was gang-related. You disagreed. I was shaking. He had investigated me. Thoroughly, he knew everything. "You think Corleone is responsible," he stated. "I know he is," I whispered, the words raw. "And you," he said, his voice dropping, "intend to make him pay. You, a girl from Queens, are going to take down Victor Corleone all by yourself." He was not mocking me. He was analyzing me. "No, this is my fight," I said. "It has nothing to do with you. You ruined my chance last night. Let me go." "I saved your life last night," he countered, his voice like steel. "And your fight has everything to do with me. Victor Corleone is my enemy, but he is an old, wounded animal, and wounded animals are predictable. You." He tilted his head. "You are not." He paused, his dark eyes searching my face. "You've been a stone in my shoe for 6 months, Lena. I do not like stones in my shoe. I had 2 options. Remove you, or find a use for you." My heart stopped. "Remove me?" "You are smart," he said, ignoring my question. "You are focused, and you are, until last night, invisible. I find that useful." This was it, the Mao Thuan, the shift in the world. "I am offering you a business deal," Giovanni Russo said. "A business deal?" I laughed, the sound high and hysterical. "I do not make deals with men like you." "You do now," he said, his tone flat. You want Carleone. I want his operation. We want the same thing, but your methods are crude. You are working from the outside. I am offering you a position on the inside." "I will not work for you," I said. "You will," he said simply, as if stating the weather. "You will stop this street-level nonsense. You will stop hunting for useless cowards like Arthur Finley. You will work for me. You will use that analytical mind of yours, the one that tracked Carleone's shipments for 3 months, and you will analyze my data. You will find the financial weak points I have missed. You will report only to me, and in exchange, I will give you what you want." "And what is that?" I whispered. "Justice." His lips barely moved. "I will dismantle his empire. I will take everything from him, and when he is broken, when he has nothing left, I will deliver Victor Carleone to you. You can have the justice you crave for Emily." It was a deal with the devil. He was offering me my deepest desire, the one thing that had fueled my existence for 2 years, but the price was my soul. To get my monster, I had to align myself with another one. "And if I refuse?" I asked. His eyes turned to ice. "You are an intelligent woman, Lena. You know my reputation. You cannot refuse. You will not leave this room until you say yes." I looked at his cold, handsome face. I thought of Emily. I thought of the 2 years I had spent in the shadows, cold and alone, getting nowhere. He was right. My plan was stupid. I was going to get myself killed. But this was a descent into a hell I had sworn to destroy. "I have no choice," I said. It was not an acceptance. It was a statement of fact. "No," he agreed. "You do not." That was how it started, my new life. I was no longer a lone avenger. I was a tool, his tool. The work was different. He sent me encrypted files, shipping manifests, bank transfers, property deeds. It was my old job, but on a scale that was terrifying. I was good at it. I found discrepancies, shell corporations, hidden accounts, and I sent my reports to a secure email address. I never saw him. The relationship was complicated. It was not a relationship. It was a transaction. But there was a strange, cold intimacy to it. He saw my mind. He respected my work. He sent a brief, one-word reply to my first report, "Good." It was more praise than I'd ever received, and I hated myself for the small thrill it gave me. Then the world started to press in. I was walking home from the grocery store, 3 weeks into my new arrangement. A dark blue sedan pulled up beside me, not a sleek town car, a standard, unmarked police vehicle. The passenger window rolled down. Lena Calloway. I froze. It was him, Detective Miller, the same man who had stood in my parents' entryway, the one who had closed Emily's case. He looked older, more tired. "We have not seen you in a while," he said, his partner staring at me from the driver's seat. "Heard you moved." "I'm busy," I said, my heart starting to pound. "I am sure you are," Miller said, his eyes hard. "We hear you are keeping interesting company. Lena, very interesting, very high level." "I do not know what you mean." "Do not play dumb with me," he snapped. "We did not care when you were sniffing around Carleone. He's old news. But Giovanni Russo, that is a different league. You are in over your head. You play with sharks. You get eaten. Stay away from him." He was warning me. The same man who had told my family there was nothing to be done about Emily was now warning me. Not because he cared about me, because he was afraid of him. "Is that all?" I asked. Miller stared at me for a long time. "For now, just remember, we are watching you." The window rolled up, and the car pulled away. I stood on the sidewalk, my grocery bag digging into my arm. I was shaking. The police, who had ignored me, were now a threat. I started walking again, faster this time. I had the undeniable, prickling sensation of being watched. I turned my head. Across the street, parked in the shadows of an awning, was a dark SUV. It was not the police. It was not Russo's men. It was just there. As I watched, a cigarette glowed in the driver's window. I realized the truth. I was not a player in a game of wits. I was the board. And the threats were coming from all sides: the police, Giovanni Russo, and now someone new, someone who was watching us both. The dark sedan across the street, the glowing ember of the cigarette, haunted me. It was a new piece on the board, a player I had not accounted for. Detective Miller was a bureaucratic threat, a problem of the system. This felt different. This felt personal. This felt like the street. I reported my encounter with Miller to Giovanni. I reported the car. I used the encrypted application he had insisted I install, a simple, text-only program that left no trace. His reply was instantaneous and cold. "You are compromised. Pack a bag. One bag. You have 10 minutes. I did not argue. The man watching me was not his, and he was not police. That left only one terrifying option: an enemy. 10 minutes later, a car I did not recognize idled at my curb. A man I had never seen, built like a refrigerator in a dark suit, knocked on my door. He did not speak. He just took my single duffel bag and walked back downstairs. I followed. This was my life now. I was a chess piece, and I was being moved by a hand I could not see. The new location was not a home. It was a corporate apartment on the 35th floor of a featureless glass skyscraper in the financial district. It was decorated in shades of gray and beige, utterly sterile, with a stunning, lonely view of the East River. It was a cage, but a very secure one. I was locked in, with my work as my only companion. And the work changed. It became more complex. At first, my analysis had been focused entirely on Victor Corleone. I was a weapon he aimed at his rival. But now, Giovanni started sending me his own files, Russo family operations, shipping manifests from his own port contracts, investment portfolios for his legitimate businesses. The directive was simple: find the vulnerabilities. I stared at the data for a full day before I understood. He was not just asking me to find weaknesses his enemies could exploit. He was asking me to find the weaknesses inside his own organization. He was asking me to be his internal auditor. He was giving me the keys to his kingdom, not out of trust, but because he believed my analytical, untainted mind could see things his own men raised in that world of brutal loyalty and silent paranoia, could not. I was no longer just seeking justice for Emily. I was actively helping a Mafia boss secure his empire. The moral line I had drawn in the sand had been washed away by the tide. I found a problem within 72 hours, a big one. His organization was leaking. It was not a gush, but a steady, methodical bleed. Small percentages, fractions of shipments, ghost employees on payrolls at his construction sites. It was brilliant. It was subtle enough that no single capo would notice the loss in his own territory. But when I aggregated the data, the total was staggering. Millions. I cross-referenced the timing, the locations, the methods. It was not Corleone. Victor's style was old-fashioned, like a sledgehammer. This was surgical. This was modern. This was someone new. I traced the diverted funds through a labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell corporations. It was a digital maze, clearly designed by a mind as analytical as my own. It took me another 48 hours, fueled by black coffee and a growing cold dread. I finally found a name, a single digital signature repeated on 3 different servers. Marco Venti. The name meant nothing to me. I forwarded my report to Giovanni. This time, his reply was not text. He summoned me. The penthouse office was, as I remembered it, a shrine of glass and power. He was standing by the window, not looking at the view, but at his own reflection. "Marco Venti," he said as I entered. He did not turn. "He's the son of an old family. Ambitious, impatient. He thinks my way is too slow. He thinks Corleone's way is antiquated. He believes it is his time." "He is stealing from you," I said, my voice flat. I laid a single sheet of paper on his massive desk. It was a flow chart I had drawn, connecting the leaked funds to Venti's primary holding company. Giovanni turned and looked at the paper. He did not touch it. He just stared at it, his face unreadable. I had just handed him proof of a massive betrayal, a declaration of war. I expected rage, shouted orders, the kind of explosive anger Emily had described in her brief, foolish association with that world. He was silent. He walked to the desk, studied my chart, and then looked at me. "How did you find the link?" "Here," I said, pointing to a node. He used the same incorporation lawyer in the Cayman Islands for 3 of his shell companies. It was sloppy. He was in a hurry. He is diverting your shipping containers from the Red Hook terminal, rerouting them, and selling them to a distributor in Montreal. Giovanni nodded, a small, sharp movement. Good. I flinched. That was it. Good. He was not a monster, roaring in his cave. He was a general, receiving a field report. He's not just stealing Giovanni, I said, the use of his first name slipping out, a product of exhaustion and the strange intimacy of our work. He is building a case. He's showing your organization that you are weak, that you can be bled. He's trying to poach your men. I am aware, he said, his voice quiet. And now, I know exactly how he is doing it. Thanks to you. In that moment, standing in that sterile, powerful room, I realized he was nothing like I had imagined. I had painted all of them with the same brush, brutal, stupid, impulsive animals. Corleone was exactly that, but Giovanni, he was a man of terrifying control. He did not revel in the violence. He saw it as a necessary, distasteful tool of business. He was a strategist, his mind a cold, sharp instrument, and he was using my mind as a scalpel. What happens now, I asked, though I was not sure I wanted the answer. Now, he said, turning back to the window. I respond. The war started quietly. A few of Venti's key men disappeared, a warehouse fire, a shipment that went into the harbor instead of onto a truck. Giovanni was surgically dismantling Venti's stolen operation, and I was at the center of it. He moved me again, not to another apartment, but to an office adjoining his penthouse. It is more efficient, Saguard, he said. It was not a request. Venti's men are watching your old building. The police are watching me. We are now in a box, Lena, and we will work from inside it. We spent days together, sometimes 48 hours, 72 hours without sleep. We were a 2-person team, locked away from the world. I would analyze the data, find the next target, and he would make a call, a quiet conversation in Italian, a few sharp commands, and another piece of Marco Venti's nascent empire would crumble. It was intoxicating, and I hated myself for it. This man was a killer. He was the king of the very world that had murdered my sister. He represented everything I had sworn to destroy. But he was also the only person in my life who treated me as an intellectual equal. He listened, he valued my analysis, he never raised his voice. He would look at my data, nod, and say, "Proceed." One night, it must have been 3 a.m, the city was a blanket of silent diamonds below us. We were both exhausted, running on fumes and coffee. "You should sleep," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. He was rubbing the bridge of his nose, his eyes closed. "So should you," I replied, staring at a screen of shipping logs. "Venti is trying to move his main product through Philadelphia. He is getting desperate. He will be handled." He opened his eyes and looked at me. The coldness was gone, replaced by a profound weariness. "You are very good at this, Lena. It is a shame." My fingers stilled on the keyboard. A shame. "That this is the world that found you," he said. "In another life, you would be running a Fortune 500 company." My heart did a stupid, painful flip. He saw me. He saw the waste. He saw what this obsession, this quest for Emily, had cost me. A tear, hot and sudden, welled in my eye. I dashed it away, angry. "Do not," I said, my voice shaking, "do not pretend to care about what I have lost. You are the one who benefits from all of this. This is your world." He stared at me, his expression hardening. "Yes, it is. And I protect what is mine." The moment was broken. The wall was back up. He was the boss. I was the tool. "Let us find Venti's leverage, maintenant," I said, turning back to the screen. But the emotional damage was done. My singular, burning quest for justice was no longer pure. It was tangled up with this complicated, cold, brilliant man. I still wanted Victor Corleone. I still needed to see him pay for Emily, but I was standing next to the only man who could make that happen. And a dark, treacherous part of me was starting to care more about Giovanni's survival than my own revenge. Marco Venti wasn't like Giovanni. He was not a surgeon. He was a butcher. He was the new generation. All flashy suits, loud cars, and public displays of cruelty. He did not understand Giovanni's quiet, methodical control. He got tired of the financial war. He decided to escalate. The first attempt was a bomb, not a subtle one, a crude, powerful device planted under Giovanni's armored sedan. It detonated while the car was pulling out of the garage. Giovanni was not in it. His driver, a man named Sal was not killed, but he was badly injured. Giovanni's reaction was terrifying. He did not rage. He became perfectly, unnaturally still. The air around him dropped 20 degrees. He spent 6 hours on the phone, his voice never rising above a quiet, lethal whisper. Venti had crossed a line. He had made it public. He had made it personal. And then he made his second, fatal mistake. He could not get to Giovanni, who was now locked in his fortress. So he decided to go after Giovanni's only known weakness. Me, the girl he had publicly claimed with his coat, the woman who was now living in his penthouse. I was alone. Giovanni had gone to the hospital to see Sal's family, a breach of his own security protocol, a strangely human gesture. I was in my adjoining office, analyzing Venti's known associates. I heard a noise, not from the hallway, from the private elevator that opened directly into the penthouse foyer, a soft, metallic thud. My blood turned to ice. Only 3 people had the code for that elevator: Giovanni, his head of security, and me. I stood up, my chair scraping silently on the floor. I looked at the security monitor. The elevator lobby was empty, but the elevator car itself was on its way up. I ran to the main office door and threw the heavy deadbolt. I backed away, my phone in my hand. I hit Giovanni's private number. He answered on the first ring. "They are here," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Someone is in the private elevator. It is not you." There was a half second of absolute silence. Then his voice, hard as diamonds. "Lena, go to my bedroom, the main one. Go to the closet. Inside, there is a steel panel. It looks like the wall. Push the left side. It is a safe room. Go, now." "Giovanni, go!" I ran. I sprinted through his massive, empty penthouse, my stockinged feet sliding on the marble. I reached his bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. I ran to the walk-in closet, a room larger than my old apartment. I found the panel he was talking about, a smooth, seamless piece of dark wood. I pushed. A heavy door clicked open. At the same moment, I heard a crash from the front of the penthouse. They had broken through the office deadbolt. Then another crash. They had just kicked open the bedroom door. Heavy footsteps. 2 men. They were shouting in Italian. "Where is she? Venti wants her. Find the girl." I slipped inside the safe room, a small, dark space, and pulled the heavy door shut. It clicked, sealing me in darkness. I was hyperventilating, my hand over my mouth to muffle the sound. I was Emily. I was trapped. This was the alley. This was the end. I could hear them in the closet. They were tearing it apart. "She is not here," one of them yelled. "Check the bathroom." Then a new sound, a different sound. The whoosh of the private elevator doors opening again. The men in the closet went silent. "Who is that?" one of them whispered. There was no answer, only the sound of fast, steady footsteps. Then the world exploded. Shouts, the sickening, wet thud of a body hitting a wall, a strangled cry, a second one, more thuds. It was fast. It was brutal. It was over in less than 10 seconds. There was only silence. I was crying, silent tears streaming down my face, my entire body shaking so hard I could barely stand. The closet, the safe room door, a soft click. The door opened. Giovanni Russo stood in the opening. He was a vision from hell. He was in his shirt sleeves, his tie gone. His forearm was splattered with blood. It was not his. His chest was heaving, and his eyes were black with a rage so pure, so animalistic. It stopped my breath. He looked at me, huddled in the dark, and the rage flickered, replaced by something I could not name. He reached in, his hand closing around my arm, and pulled me out into the light. His hands were rough, almost frantic. He checked my arms, my face, my neck. He was looking for injuries, his gaze intense. "Are you hurt?" he snarled. "No," I whispered. "I am fine." He stared at me for another second, as if to be certain. Then he did something I never could have predicted. He pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me like steel bands. He buried his face in my hair, his body rigid. It was not a hug. It was an act of possession. It was a claiming. "He will not touch you again," and he growled, the words a low vibration against my skull. I was shaking violently, my hands fisted in his shirt. I was trapped in the arms of a killer, a man who had just dispatched 2 others in the next room. I was surrounded by the scent of him, sandalwood and iron. And for the first time in 2 years, I was not cold. I was safe. I hated him for it. I hated how my body betrayed me, sinking into his warmth. I hated that the man who held the keys to my revenge was also the only one who could protect me. My mission, my life, my heart. It was no longer my own. It was hopelessly, terrifyingly compromised. He held me for a long time. I stood rigid in his embrace, my hands fisted in his bloody shirt. The smell of sandalwood and iron filled my lungs. There were 2 dead men in his bedroom, men who had been sent to take me, and the man holding me was the one who had killed them. He had done it without a sound, with a brutal efficiency that terrified me to my core. Finally, he pulled back. His hand stayed on my arm, his grip like steel. The animalistic rage in his eyes had receded, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. "They will not stop," he said, his voice a low growl. "He will not stop." Marco Venti had breached the fortress. He had tried to take me. It was an act of war, a personal insult Giovanni could not ignore. "You are not safe here," he said. He released me and turned, walking out of the closet. I followed him, my legs unsteady, past the sprawled bodies. I did not look at them. His security team, led by a hard-faced man named Rico, was already there, cleaning the mess, their movements silent and practiced. Giovanni spoke to Rico in rapid, low Italian. The words were sharp, angry. Rico just nodded, his face impassive. Giovanni turned back to me. "This place is compromised. We are moving. Now." We did not move to another apartment. We moved to a place I did not know existed, a compound north of the city, hidden behind acres of forest and a 10-foot concrete wall. It was a fortress of stone and glass overlooking the Hudson River. It was his real home. The war escalated. Giovanni was no longer just responding to Venti. He was hunting him, and I was his primary weapon. My life, my quest, my entire world shrank to the confines of this new, opulent prison. Giovanni moved my workstations into his main study, a room with a 20-foot ceiling and a fireplace I could have stood in. We were together constantly. We worked. We ate. We strategized. The line between prisoner and partner, between tool and confidant, blurred into a confusing, dangerous gray. He was obsessed with Venti, but Venti had gone to ground, his operations vanishing, his money trails drying up. "He's pulling everything back," I told Giovanni one night, staring at a screen of dead accounts. We were the only 2 awake in the massive house. "He is consolidating. He's not running. He is preparing for something." "Find him," Giovanni ordered. He was standing by the massive window, staring into the darkness. "I want to know where he sleeps." To find Venti, I had to dig deeper. I had to go back to the beginning, back to the source of his money, back to his first moves against Giovanni, back to when he was allied with the scraps of Victor Corleone's organization. Giovanni gave me complete, unrestricted access to his entire digital archive, every file, every operation, every piece of surveillance from the last 5 years. "Find the connection," he said. "Find the one he left." For days, I sifted through a mountain of digital ghosts. I cross-referenced Venti's known associates with Corleone's old crew. I was looking for a name, a date, a single transaction that linked them. And then I found it. It was not a file on Venti. It was an old surveillance folder, buried deep in the archives, labeled simply Corleone Midtown, the date 2 years ago, the week Emily died. My heart stopped. I told myself it was irrelevant, it was old data, but my fingers moved on their own, my mind clicking into that cold, analytical groove. I opened the folder. It was filled with surveillance reports from Giovanni's own men. They had been tracking one of Corleone's top lieutenants. They were planning to turn him, to pull him away from Corleone's crumbling organization. The reports detailed his movements, his meetings, his habits, and his mistakes. I read the text, my blood turning to ice. The lieutenant had a weakness, a new girl, a college girl, 19, beautiful, reckless. Her name was Emily. I read on, my vision blurring, my breath caught in my chest. The lieutenant had been careless. He had brought her to a private party, a meeting between Corleone's loyalists and the men who were planning to defect to Giovanni. Corleone had found out about the defection. He had seen it as the ultimate betrayal. He needed to send a message to his own traitors, and a message to Giovanni, the man who was poaching them. So he gave the order, the girl, the lieutenant's weakness. She was to be made an example of. I sank to my knees on the thick Persian rug. The report was clinical. It detailed the incident and it described how she was taken, how she was killed, how she was left in an alley as a warning. She was not collateral damage. She was the message. Victor Corleone. It was him. He had given the order. My hatred for him, a cold ember, roared back to life, hot and consuming. But that was not the end of the file. At the bottom of the last report, there was a final entry, a summary from the lead surveillance man, one of Giovanni's capos. The incident is concluded. The lieutenant is broken. He will be of no use to us. Corleone has sent his message. This attempt at acquisition is a failure. Recommending we pull the team, subject Emily Calloway terminated. And beneath that, a single digital authorization, a note that the operation was officially closed. Signed, G.R. Giovanni Russo. He had known. He had not ordered it. He had not killed her. But he had known. His operation, his attempt to gut Corleone's family, had set the entire horrific chain of events in motion. His men were watching. They had watched it happen. They had reported it, and he had signed off on it. Subject terminated. She was a pawn. My sister, my vibrant, stupid, beautiful sister, was a pawn in a game between two monsters. And the man whose house I was in, the man whose protection I had accepted, the man whose touch had made me feel safe, was one of them. The room was silent. The only sound was the frantic, sick pounding of my own heart. The man I had been helping, the man I had been shielding, was complicit in the death of my sister. I stood up. My mind was clear. The confusion, the shame, the flicker of warmth I had felt for him, it all burned away. There was only the cold, hard clarity of purpose, the purpose I had felt when I first saw Victor Corleone at the hotel. I had to choose. I could walk out of this room, find the gun I knew he kept in his desk, and kill him. End it. Avenge Emily. It would be justice. Or I could use him. I could use his power, the power he had given me, to finish what I started, to destroy them all. Venti, Corleone, and finally, him. I sat back down at the computer. My hands were perfectly steady. I had my answer. Revenge was not a single bullet. It was a strategy. I continued my work. I dug, but I was no longer looking for Venti's location. I was looking for his entire infrastructure. I found it. I found the central server, the heart of his operation. I found the offshore accounts. I found the leverage he was using to hold his alliances together. And I found something else. I found a link between Venti and Corleone. Venti had not just absorbed Corleone's scraps. He was hiding Corleone. The old man was Venti's prisoner, his trophy. Venti was planning a coup, and he was going to use Corleone as his proof of victory. I had all the pieces. The climax came 3 days later. Venti, arrogant and believing he was in control, demanded a meeting. He wanted to negotiate Giovanni's surrender. He named the place a defunct bank vault in Lower Manhattan. He said to come alone. He claimed, a guest of honor. "It is a trap," Giovanni said. We were in his study. He was checking the magazine of a sleek black handgun. "I know," I said, my voice calm. I looked at him. This beautiful, cold monster. My sister's killer. He has Corleone. He is going to present him to you. He thinks it is his checkmate. Giovanni looked up, his eyes sharp. "How do you know?" "I know," I said. "I also know where every dollar he has is located. I know the name of the bank in Zurich. I know the account numbers. I know the name of his contact at the port. I know the politician he is paying to look the other way." Giovanni stared at me. The air crackled. He saw the shift in me. He saw the coldness, the mirror of his own. "What do you want, Lena?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I want to go with you," I said. "I am the only one who can disarm him. You are a killer, Giovanni. But he is not a soldier. He is an accountant, and I speak his language." He argued it was too dangerous, but he knew I was right. I was his only advantage. The bank vault was cold, the air thick with the smell of dust and concrete. It was just the three of us, Giovanni, me, and Rico, his security head, who stayed by the massive steel door. Marco Venti was waiting for us in the center of the cavernous room. He was a small man, impeccably dressed, his face sharp and nervous. He was flanked by 6 of his men, all holding machine guns. And in a chair, in the center of the room, was Victor Corleone. He was a ghost. The old, booming man from the party was gone. He was thin, pale, his silver hair matted. He looked up as we entered, his eyes wide with a pathetic, desperate hope. He saw Giovanni, and that hope died. "Giovanni," Venti said, his voice high and thin, "thank you for coming. I'm glad you could see the new, management." "Let him go, Marco," Giovanni said, his voice a low rumble. "This is between us." "Oh, it is," Venti squealed. "It is, but he is the symbol, the old way, dying, and you," he pointed a shaking finger at Giovanni, "are the broken way. I am the new way, and she," his eyes landed on me, "she is the proof that you are weak. You brought your whore to a war meeting." Giovanni moved, a blur of speed, but Venti's men raised their weapons. Giovanni froze. "Ah," Venti said, his confidence growing. "Not so fast. This is my party. You see, I win. You will sign over your territories, your ports, everything. Or I kill you. I kill him. And I take her." "You get nothing," Giovanni said. "I get everything," Venti screamed. "I already have everything." "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the vault. Every eye turned to me. Venti looked confused. "You have nothing, Marco," I said. I was holding my tablet. I had not been idle. "You think these men work for you?" "They are loyal," he snapped. "They are mercenaries," I countered, my voice gaining strength. "They are loyal to your money, and your money is gone." Venti laughed. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the account at Credit Suisse in Zurich," I said. "Account number 4729, as of 5 minutes ago. That account has a balance of 0. I moved it. It is now sitting in a transitional account in Panama, an account that is flagged, by the way. By the time your bankers even trace it, it will be seized." Venti's face went white. He pulled out his phone. "You are lying." "Am I?" I said. "Check it. And while you are at it, you should probably call your contact at the port, a man named Alvarez. He will not be answering, because an anonymous tip just sent the FBI to his office with a list of every illegal container he has moved for you for the last 6 months. And the politician Senator Rawlings. He just received a donation to his opponent's campaign for the exact amount you paid him from an account linked to you. He's already drafting a statement disavowing you." Venti was staring at his phone, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold it. His face was a mask of disbelief. "You are finished, Marco," I said, my voice cold. I did not just take your money, I took your entire infrastructure. You are not a boss. You're just a small, stupid man in a vault with no friends. Venti stammered. You bitch! He raised a small pistol he had been hiding and aimed it at me. Giovanni moved, Rico moved. But Venti's own men did not move. They looked at each other. Their loyalty was gone. Their payday was gone. Giovanni was on him. He did not go for the gun. He hit Venti in the throat, a single, brutal strike. Venti collapsed, gagging. The gun clattered to the floor. Venti's men looked at Giovanni, who stood over their fallen boss. They looked at their guns. They looked at Rico, who was now flanked by 4 more of Giovanni's men who had entered silently from a back passage. One by one, they dropped their weapons. It was over. Giovanni stood breathing heavily. He looked at Venti, who was weeping on the floor. He looked at Carleone, who was shaking in his chair. Then he looked at me. His face was a mixture of shock, awe, and something else, something dark. I had not just helped him. I had shown him my teeth. I had proven that I was just as ruthless, just as cold as he was. He had won. He had kept his power. And I had finally, truly destroyed my enemies. Venti was broken, and Carleone was a captive. My captive. I walked over to the old man. I knelt in front of him. His eyes were small and dark, just as I remembered. But now, they were filled with terror. "Do you know who I am?" I whispered. He shook his head, whimpering. "I am Lena Calloway." I said, "Emily Calloway was my sister." The recognition and the horror that dawned on his face was the first taste of justice I had ever had. It was cold, and it was perfect. The sound of Victor Carleone's whimpering was a thin, pathetic thread in the vast, cold silence of the vault. Giovanni did not look at me. He did not look at Carleone. His eyes were on Marco Venti, who was still curled on the concrete, choking. He looked at his men, the ones who had just surrendered, with a flat, cold assessment. He was a king reclaiming his throne. He gave a sharp nod to Rico. "Clean this up. Take him." He gestured to Venti. "And his men. I want them gone. Giovanni's gaze finally settled on Carleone, his voice dropping an octave. "Belongs to me." Rico and his team moved with terrifying efficiency. Venti was hauled to his feet, his hands bound. Carleone, shaking so hard he could barely stand, was pulled from the chair. He looked at me one last time, his eyes a silent, begging scream. I felt nothing. The cold, perfect feeling of justice was already beginning to fade, replaced by a hollow, ringing emptiness. Giovanni put his hand on the small of my back, the same gesture he had used at the party. Not a caress, a command, a signal of ownership. "We are leaving." The ride back to the fortress was silent. The city lights streamed past the tinted windows, a world away, a life I could no longer touch. Giovanni sat across from me, his face a mask of stone. He was not looking at me. He was staring straight ahead, lost in his own calculations, tallying his victory. I had done it. I had won. Venti was finished. Carleone was captured. Emily was avenged. So why did I feel so empty? Why did I feel like I was the one who had just been locked in a vault? The ghost of my sister, the one that had driven me for 2 long years, was quiet. The burning rage that had been my fuel, my food, my only reason for living, was gone. And in its place, there was nothing. Just a vast, cold, barren landscape of a person I no longer recognized. I had become a creature of his world. I had used my mind as a weapon. I had destroyed men, financially, logistically, and I had felt a cold thrill in doing it. I had gotten my justice, but I had lost myself. And I had done it all in partnership with a man who was, in his own way, just as guilty as the man I was hunting. The file, subject Emily Calloway, terminated. Authorized G.R. Giovanni had known. His men had watched. They had let her die to protect an operation that had failed anyway. My sister's life had been worth less than a failed business deal. I looked at him, really looked at him, in the flashing shadows of the car, his handsome, cold face, his powerful hands, resting calmly on his knees. He was a monster, a beautiful, brilliant, controlled monster, and I had helped him secure his kingdom. When we arrived at the fortress, he walked me to the door of my suite. "You are safe here," he said. It was not a comfort, it was a statement of fact. "Rest, Rico will post men at your door." "Am I your prisoner again?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. He turned to me, and for a second, the mask slipped. His eyes, so dark and unreadable, were filled with something complex, the shock and awe I had seen in the vault. "You are not a prisoner, Lena. You are the reason I am still breathing. You are the reason my organization still stands." "I am a tool," I stated, "and I have served my purpose." His jaw tightened. "Go to sleep." He left me. I walked into the opulent room and stood in the dark. I had done it. I was free. I could walk out. I could go back to Queens, to my parents, to the beige carpets and the smell of sawdust. But I could not. The girl who had lived in that world was gone. She had died with Emily. I was this new creature, this hollowed out, cold thing, and I did not know where I belonged. For days, the fortress was quiet. The war was over. Giovanni was busy. I could hear his helicopter taking off in the mornings, returning late at night. He was cementing his power, absorbing the remnants of Venti's and Carleone's organizations. He was the undisputed king. I was left alone. I was a ghost in his castle. I wandered the stone hallways. I read books I could not remember. I stared at the dark, cold river from the terrace. I had my revenge, but the trauma was still there. The wound was not healed. The pain was just as sharp. I realized that justice and peace were not the same thing. Justice was cold and sharp and final. Peace was warm and soft, and it was a million miles away. I was still haunted. I was still that girl, standing in my parents' entryway, listening to the detectives tell me my sister was gone. Nothing could change that. Nothing could fix it. I had just added more ghosts to my collection. On the third night, I was on the terrace. The air was cold, the wind sharp off the river. I was wearing a thin silk robe, but I could not feel the chill. I was numb, inside and out. I was waiting. I was the last loose end. I knew everything. I knew about Venti, about Carleone, and I knew about Emily. I knew he was complicit. I was the one person alive who could expose him, who could destroy him, just as I had destroyed Venti. I realized, the single most dangerous person in his world. And in his world, dangerous things were removed. I heard the glass door slide open behind me. I did not turn. I just stared at the pinpricks of light on the far shore. This was it. "Lena?" His voice was quiet, close behind me. I did not answer. "You are cold, Yum," he said. "Ah." A bitter laugh escaped me. "I'm always cold." I waited for the hand on my shoulder, the sharp, quick pain, the fall into the dark water. Instead, something warm and impossibly soft settled around me. I looked down. It was a coat, not his massive, imposing overcoat. It was a woman's coat, made of the deepest blue cashmere, so soft it felt like water. It was simple, perfectly cut and absurdly expensive. It was warm. I turned, stunned. He was standing there, in just his shirt sleeves. He was not the boss. He was not the monster. He was just a man, watching me, his face etched with a weariness that matched my own. "Victor Carleone," he said, his voice low. "He's gone. My promise is kept. He will never harm anyone ever again. What Venti started, I finished. He will not see the light of day again for the rest of his very short life." I should have felt something, relief, victory, but I felt nothing. "You knew," I whispered, the words torn from me by the wind. "You knew about Emily, from the very beginning." He did not flinch. He did not lie. His gaze was steady. "Yes." "Your men were there," I accused, my voice shaking, the numbness cracking. They watched. They wrote a report. Subject terminated. She was my sister. Yes, he said again, his voice rough. It was a war. I was trying to turn one of his lieutenants. I did not give the order. Lena, you know I did not, but I did not stop it. It was a mistake, a casualty I allowed to protect an operation. It was cold. It was wrong, and it failed. Tears streamed down my face, hot and sudden, the first I had shed in 2 years. She was 19. I know, he said. He did not move to touch me. He did not offer empty apologies. He just stood there, accepting my accusation, accepting his part in it. He looked at the coat he had just put on me. The first coat, he said, his voice so quiet I could barely hear him. The one at the party, that was for them. It was a claim, a statement, to show them you were mine, that you were protected. He reached out, his fingers brushing the soft cashmere on my shoulder. His touch was light, hesitant, so unlike him. This one, he said, his dark eyes locked on mine. This one is for you, because you are cold. My breath hitched. He was not trying to protect his asset. He was not claiming me. He was simply seeing me. He saw the cold, hollow, broken thing I had become, and he was offering warmth. It was not a business deal. It was not a strategy. It was a gift. It was, in his own dark, damaged way, an act of care. I stared at him, this man who was responsible for so much of my pain, and yet was the only person on earth who understood it, the only one who had seen me, all of me, the intelligence, the rage, and the brokenness underneath. It was easier to hate a monster. It was infinitely harder to hate the man who had just shown me his own damaged humanity. I did not know what to do. I did not know who I was anymore. My quest for justice was over. But my life, I realized, was now irrevocably tangled with his. I pulled the coat tighter around me. The warmth was real, and I was so cold. The blue cashmere coat was a strange, heavy warmth on my shoulders. It was a kindness I did not understand, a gesture that did not fit in the cold, hard world he and I now inhabited. Giovanni stood before me, his admission hanging in the cold night air. Yes, I knew. He had admitted his part in it. He had not made excuses. He had not lied. He had simply stood in the wind and accepted my judgment, my hatred. And that, more than anything, broke me. It was so much easier when he was a monster. It was so much simpler when the world was black and white, when I was good and he was evil. But the girl who believed in good and evil had died 2 years ago, in an alley with her sister. I was not that girl. I was a woman who had just dismantled an empire from a keyboard. I was a woman who had felt a cold, perfect thrill as I watched Victor Corleone, my sister's murderer, tremble at my feet. Who was I to judge the man standing in front of me? He had killed with his hands. I had killed with my mind. We were two sides of the same dark, tarnished coin. What now? I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. Do you kill me? I know everything. I know what you did. I know what I did. I am the last threat, Giovanni. He took a step closer. The wind whipped his black hair across his face. He did not look like a king. He looked tired. If I wanted to kill you, Lena, you would have been dead 6 months ago in that museum hallway. He reached out, not to touch me, but to pull the collar of the cashmere coat closer around my neck, shielding me from the wind. His fingers brushed my skin, a touch as light as a memory. I do not want to kill you, he said, his voice a low, rough murmur. I want you to stay. Stay, I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Stay as what? Your prisoner, your analyst, your pet project. Stay, he said, as my partner. Stay as the only person in my world who is not afraid of me, the only person who sees me, the only person as intelligent and as ruthless as I am. He was offering me a throne, a dark, bloody throne, built on the bones of my enemies and the ghost of my sister. He was offering me the one thing I had not realized I had been building power. I looked into his dark, bottomless eyes. My quest for revenge was over. It had ended in a cold vault, leaving me empty. I had spent 2 years living for the dead, my sister, my past self. I had been a ghost, haunting the living. Giovanni Russo was not a good man. He was a killer. He was a criminal. He was complicit in the single greatest tragedy of my life. But he was also the only man who had ever seen my true self, my mind, my strength, and had not been afraid of it. He had honed it. He had unleashed it. I had a choice. I could take this warmth he was offering, this coat, this partnership, and step into a new life, a life of power, a life in the present, or I could turn away, walk out into the cold, and remain a ghost forever, with nothing but my sister's memory to keep me company. "I am not the woman you think I am," I whispered. "I am not good. I am not kind. I am cold." "I know," he said. His hand moved from the collar, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. His touch was electric, a jolt in the numbness. "That is why you're the only one I can trust." I made my decision. I did not do it for him. I did not do it for Emily. I did it for me. I did it for the woman who had clawed her way out of that gray cubicle, the woman who had survived, the woman who had just won a war. I was not going to fade into nothing. I leaned forward into his touch and nodded. "All right, Giovanni, I will stay." My new life began. The world did not see me. I was still Giovanni's shadow, but his inner circle, his capos, the men who ran his empire, they saw me. At first, they saw a woman, a plaything. They saw the coat he had put on my shoulders, and they dismissed me. Giovanni corrected them. He held his first new council meeting in the massive study. The men, hard, older, brutal, filed in. I was sitting at the table, to Giovanni's right, my tablet in front of me. "What is this?" one of them, a man named Tonio, sneered. "You bring a girl to our table?" Giovanni did not even look at him. "Lena, tell Tonio what you found in his shipping manifests." I did not flinch. "You're skimming, Tonio," I said, my voice clear and cold. 3% for the last 18 months. You thought no one would notice. You've been rerouting it through a dry cleaning business in Brooklyn. It was sloppy. You used your nephew's name on the lease." The man's face turned the color of ash. The other men at the table stared, their contempt vanishing, replaced by a sudden, sharp fear. Giovanni looked at Tonio. "She's just saved your life. I was going to have you killed, but she—" He nodded at me. "Has devised a new auditing system that will repay your debt, with interest. You will now answer to her. All of you. Your finances, your logistics. They are all hers. I am the fist. She," he said, "is the brain." I was not his partner. I was his queen. I was no longer seeking justice for Emily. I was building an empire. I was using my mind to create a new order, a Russo organization that was efficient, clean, and untouchable. The old ways of Corleone and Venti, the impulsive, stupid violence, were gone. We were a corporation, a lethal, powerful corporation. And I was at peace. It was a cold peace, a dark peace, but it was mine. About a month after the meeting, Giovanni came to me. I was in the study, which was now my office. He was holding a small, dark wooden box. "There is one more thing," he said, his voice quiet. "One last piece from your old life. I did not know when to give it to you. I did not know if I should, but I think you are ready now." My heart, which I had thought was dormant, gave a small, painful lurch. He set the box on my desk. "What is this?" After Venti," he said, struggling with the words. "We cleared his properties. We found Victor Corleone's personal effects. This was among them. It was not his. It was addressed to you." I looked at the box. My name, Lena, was carved into the lid. I did not recognize the carving. My hands were shaking. I opened it. Inside, on a bed of faded velvet, was a single, sealed envelope and a small, silver locket. My breath caught. It was the locket my grandmother had given Emily. I had not seen it since she died. I opened the envelope. The handwriting was messy, looping, and instantly, agonizingly familiar. It was from Emily. My dearest Lana, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and it means my plan worked. Please do not hate me, and please do not hate him. This was my choice, all of it. I was not the stupid little girl you thought I was. I knew what world I was in. I saw the monsters. I saw Carleone. I saw what he was, a cancer, a remnant of a brutal, stupid age, and I saw Giovanni Russo. I saw the future. I saw his control, his discipline. I saw a man who could bring order to the chaos. Carleone's men, they were closing in. They knew I was talking to one of Russo's men. They were going to kill me. I knew that. But I also knew you, Lena. I knew your brilliant, cold mind. I knew you were trapped in your small, safe life. You were a lion, pretending to be a house cat, and I knew the only thing in the world that could unleash you was me. My death was not a tragedy. It was a key. It was the only key that could unlock you, that could set you on the path. I knew you would not rest. I knew you would come for them. I knew you would dig, and you would fight, and you would not stop until you found the truth. And I knew that path would lead you to him, to Giovanni. He's not a good man, Lena, but he is a better man, and he's the only man in the world strong enough for you. I put you on this chessboard, my brilliant sister. I sacrificed my peace so that you could become the queen. I did it to save you from your safe, small life, and I did it to save him, the only man who could build a world worth living in. Do not let my death be a tragedy. Let it be a victory. Let it be the reason you finally became the person you were always meant to be. Protect him. Build the world I dreamed of. Be the queen. I love you, Emily. The letter slipped from my fingers. I was sobbing. Great, gasping, tearing sobs. The grief I had held back for 2 years. The grief I had channeled into cold, hard rage. It broke free. It was not just grief for her. It was grief for the lie I had lived. My revenge, my justice, my quest. It was all a plan. A final, brilliant, ruthless strategy from a 19-year-old girl who saw the world more clearly than I ever had. Giovanni was there. He had not left. He had knelt beside my chair, and for the first time, he pulled me into a real embrace. He held me while I shattered. He held me while I mourned my sister, not as a victim, but as a strategist, as a soldier, as the architect of my entire life. I cried until I was empty. When I finally pulled back, I was not hollow, I was not cold, I was whole. The ghost was gone. The rage was gone. All that was left was the truth. I looked at Giovanni. I saw him, really saw him, not as a monster, not as a savior, but as the man my sister had chosen. The man she had died to protect, the man she had given to me. My purpose was no longer revenge, it was legacy. It is done, I whispered, my voice raw. He nodded, his eyes searching mine. It is done. He leaned in, and this time, when his lips met mine, it was not a capture, it was not a claim, it was an acceptance, it was a promise. It was the sealing of an alliance, a partnership, a kingdom. All of it bought and paid for with the blood of the sister who had loved us both. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And please, hit that hype button. It really helps this story get heard by more people.